If you're an orthodontist with student loans, there's a good chance that you have $600,000 or more in debt in many cases. Of course, some orthodontists get really lucky. Some of you go out and have $200,000 of dental school debt and maybe take out a modest amount of debt during a residency program because you're very careful with your finances, and maybe you only graduate with $300,000 or $400,000 of student loan debt. In that case, you might consider doing something like a consolidation with the revised pay-as-you-earn strategy and getting an interest subsidy and then refinancing through links like ours at studentloanplanner.com/refi, where you can get a cashback bonus, compare a lot of different places to see what would be the best interest rate that you could get on your student loan debt. But what's the reality of orthodontic training programs these days is you go through a dental school program and rack up a typical $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 dental school debt, and then you have to go to a 3-year training program for a orthodontics residency. And since a lot of times these programs have minimal stipends or they don't cover the full cost of living in a certain area, and you might actually have a lot of loan fees as well that you have to take out. For example, some of the bigger orthodontic training programs have fees that are like $75,000 a year in some cases. So if you take out this additional debt to finance your training as an orthodontist, you're piling hundreds of thousands of dollars on top of $500,000 or $400,000, $300,000 that you already owe. And so then the interest really accrues and grows while you're in training, because you're probably not taking that extra step of calling your loan servicer to get an in-school deferment waiver. You're probably not attempting to get the right repayment program set up for your long-term goals. You're probably not thinking about your student loan debt during an orthodontic residency program as much as you should. So after that residency ends and you finally start making a associate level income of like $225,000, something like that, then you have $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, even $1 million of student loan debt. We've had 3 orthodontists that have had approximately $1 million of student loan debt, although our typical orthodontist has more like $600,000 of student loan debt. As we see people who are borrowing at today's prices finish their training, I fully expect the average debt for an orthodontist that went to a typical dental school with a typical residency program with a typical cost, I think that the average is going to trend more towards $700,000 or $800,000, which is truly frustrating. So say you come out owing that much, what do you do? What do you do to live and have a good life and live a decent, financially secure lifestyle? Well, the first thing that you have to do is get your student loans under control by getting on the right repayment program for your life. So if you have a debt-to-income ratio that's over 1.5 to 1, you're probably going to need to look into loan forgiveness strategies. Maybe you're living in a community property state and are married to a spouse that makes a lot less than you, maybe who has no student loan debt. In that case, thinking about a community property filing separate strategy with pay-as-you-earn or IBR. Maybe you need to be thinking about depreciation for your practice to try to get your adjusted gross income lower. Maybe you want to put money into your retirement accounts to lower your income that way to get your student loan payments to a lower amount to increase the value of loan forgiveness. So also maybe you just frankly want to build up a little bit more cash flow to buy a practice and eventually refinance it, but you're afraid of when you want to refinance that debt. So maybe you need to refinance it a little bit after buying a practice, or do you refinance it before, or do you wait several years? There's all kinds of decisions that you have to make. One thing that I can tell you is that the practice owners that we've worked with in the orthodontic community have made around $400,000 or $500,000 a year, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. How many professions out there that make that much money? Not many. And while you might still owe a ton of student loan debt, you can certainly have a lot of options with that kind of an income. Now, if you want to work in a big city, in a saturated market, like think about any city that actually has an orthodontic residency program is probably going to be saturated because a certain percent of those people are just going to want to stay right where they're at, right? So if that's you, if you're going to do that, then just know that you're going to make less money. You probably will make in the mid 200,000s or low 300,000s if you decide to buy a practice, and you'll make less than that as an associate. So the same goes for a place like Utah or in most places in California, New York City. Places like that are very saturated. So you just have to realize that if you have a lot of student loan debt, you might need to use a different strategy if you're going to live in one of those places. So if you want to deal with your orthodontic student loans that are larger than most people's mortgage in many cases, we're probably the only group with Student Loan Planner that's actually advised many, many people in the orthodontic community about this. So if you want to get help, just reach out to help@studentloanplanner.com. We'd love to get more information about you and see what we can do to help figure out your loan. So just please reach out and we'll get an analysis done for you for a very fair, transparent fee. And the most important thing, though, is just figure out your orthodontic student loans. Don't just put your head in the sand and just pretend they're going to go away. It's something that if you do a little bit of planning now in the front end, you can have tremendous positive impact over the life of your loan repayment. Most people don't pay attention to it until 3, 4, 5 years out of training when it's just ballooned and you did an income-based payment, you signed up for that, but you didn't really understand why. You're not really doing a lot in your brokerage account. You're just kind of throwing money randomly at problems and you just don't know what to do. That's something that you really should get help with. So orthodontists with student loans get really just screwed over even though they have decent incomes. You're dealing with a monster student loan debt and you really want to make sure you get a plan for that. So thanks so much for watching.